Hey everybody, welcome. We need some fucking intro music or something.
I don't know. That's kind of. I kind of think we gotta stay in the trash bin for a little bit longer.
Welcome to Nifilmism.
He's Ryan. I'm Drew. We're slowly unraveling before you. All 14. I did look, and there are on average 14 views of our videos. So unless people are killing themselves to this, we have 14 people that are regulars, and I appreciate that. I applaud you for your efforts to stay with us in this dark time. Today we're probably going to keep it short because we want to talk about our Altered Carbon, which started out interesting and then became very, very, very bad.
Look, I promise, everything that we've done recently has been bitching about movies we don't like. I assure you, there are movies and TV shows that we enjoy.
We do tend to go... I think because negativity is easy, especially for us. But no, there's things to like. And until I get my Movie Pass card and join the 21st century, I still can't go to see a lot of stuff that I want to go see for cheap.
First movie on that list is Annihilation if it's still
I
in
hope
theaters.
it better be. I'm hoping that the 5 to 7 business is closer because it's still at reasonable times, and I want to be able to go and.
Not 3 o'clock on a Saturday, one showing.
Yeah, well, normal people get 3 o'clock on Saturdays, but I digress. But no, we do on the back burner want to go back and talk about Blade Runner, but today I figure we'll do the cheesy, lazy way and talk about another neo-noir, cyberpunkish thing that we've watched recently, and it's enough in our alcohol-addled minds that we can remember it because it happened over the past couple weeks that we've both watched this through.
Altered Carbon, starring the Republican candidate from House of Cards, and who else is in it?
Kinnaman, and then that girl who looks like a fox.
Yeah.
Dickon Laman or something. Or
sure.
Her name is. She's...
For the record, I love the first couple of episodes. James Purfoy's great.
And then you remember you wanted more Rome and never got it.
That's sad.
No. If any of you have been watching or heard us mention this and watched it or anything like that, or interested enough to pay attention to this as we go into spoiler territory at some point easily, no, it starts off pretty strong because the very premise is really unique, but then they don't really use it to like the best of its ability. The whole sleeve idea.
The first thought I had watching this was this guy was in all right, backing up a little bit to get into the plot, there's somebody, he was a sort of revolutionary that failed revolution anyway, ends up getting thrown in prison for 250 years, but that's done by putting your consciousness basically on ice.
Yeah.
And then they put you into whatever...
Demolition Man, except not actually put in a petri dish of ice.
That's exactly where I was going with this, is Demolition Man has the issue of he's only out for a few decades, wakes up, and the entire world is different.
Yeah.
This guy's out for 250 years, wakes up, and it's like nothing has changed.
Yeah. There's a lot lost in the sense that every aspect of the times you see, because you do flash back to when the envoys were a thing, and thankfully they're not like Jedi tier or anything. They're just really, really good, like Delta operatives essentially.
Right.
But even that's vaguely defined. We'll get more into that later as we keep talking. But no, like he was put on ice or whatever they put in sleep or whatever they call it when you're in prison, where you're out of a body for 250 years, and you don't get a sense at all, other than maybe one scene before he buys a shit ton of drugs, that he's not used to the world as it is at this point, and then it's just gone. And I guess from the limited legwork I did in the book series that when they spin you up, as they say in the series, when they put you in a body, they kind of put you through like a
reacclimation,
like a reacclimation thing. But you never see that in the series, so
which is a problem.
You have to assume it doesn't happen.
So the basic premise is that somebody has invented technology where your consciousness goes into a computer chip of a sort that's implanted in the back of your neck. If you die, they can take that computer chip, put it into another body, and your consciousness is then transferred. The only way to actually die is if that chip, called a stack, is destroyed.
Yeah, they call it RDing, real death. Otherwise, it's just sleeve death, which I kind of like that aspect of the show of how traditional crimes are redefined, and it makes them sound even grosser.
Yeah.
Like where there's a point where all the super rich have a party where they have gladiatorial combat to the death, but it's only the sleeve death, and they have a permit for, what do they call it, like extreme physical violence or something. And it's like, oh, it's okay because like only the sleeves are dying, the stacks are fine for these willing paid combatants, and it's just kind of like a, I think that's kind of grosser, honestly, in a way.
Yeah, and there's
where like there is a lot of that, like that cultural clash with what our reality is like that you get in the show, that everything is kind of very throwaway. Like it's a far more commercialized world in that sense, where it's like your body doesn't really matter because you could die, but like if you have enough money, you could be re-sleeved like the next day.
The hospital scene is maybe my favorite little aside in the whole thing. Somebody is bleeding to death, has minutes to live. They walk them into the hospital, and credit check, you don't have enough money for this hospital. We'll see you, but you're in the back of the line, because who cares if your sleeve dies?
Yeah, they could
we'll
still
just give you
stack,
something else, right?
But there's a limited effort towards the religious aspect with the neo-Catholics, and how their stacks are all coded. Like the idea of like just like a driver's license, your stack can get coded religious, and then that coding prevents you from ever being spun up for any reason whatsoever.
Basically a DNR.
Yeah. It's basically the future do not resuscitate order, and it seems like only the neo-Catholics, at least of what you're shown in the show, because it's a limited series. You only have enough that you can delve into, and I guess this was delved into just enough. But there's some shenanigans around coding that play into the plot at the end when things start just falling apart because they want the easy way out and they want the action scenes. But
we'll get to that too.
But no, then there's this whole thing about there was a recent resolution passed in the UN that that coding, your religious coding, will prevent you from being spun up against your will to testify against your own murderer. And that plays into the plot, but you get a taste of it at the beginning. You're like, okay, cool, I like this world. Like he comes out of prison, he's in a different body. You get a little shock horror there of like there's a little girl who was put in an old lady because that was all that. That was all that was available at the time. So there's a bit of that like wealth distribution issue that you get where, if you're poor, you're only going to get what's available. Like later on in the series, one of the poorer characters gets cross-sleeved because the only body available was a male body. And you get a sense that like, this might happen more often, and like it sucks. But you don't get enough of that. You get, because very early on the main character is basically given a bottomless bank account, and he becomes hardboiled detective man, essentially. Which has its perks,
because I liked seeing just how far some of this goes. There are things, they refer to the super rich as meths, which is short for Methuselahs, because they can live, in essence, forever.
Yeah, and they have the added benefit of their wealth being able to they can basically live in their original bodies forever because they just clone their original bodies as new sleeves, and they all needle cast out to like satellites that keep a backup record every like hour or every 10 minutes or so of what they did. So in case their stack gets blown, they still exist. They can port into another stack and another clone. So they're the most essentially like immortal of these functionally immortals in the world at this point.
And if all of that sounds like a really cool premise, it is. But
but the first 2 episodes set you up with this murder mystery plot of this super, super wealthy meth hires the main guy who you find out was a failed revolutionary, and he's in a world of like, it's the equivalent of like if he was like a Confederate brought back in a Union world.
That's a good way to put it.
And you get a little bit of that, but then you see how small scale the envoys were that you really don't think 250 years later anybody would give a shit about them.
But they never flesh it out enough.
Yeah. There's a lot of surface work done, but not a lot of depth there, or that's them trying to have you buy in for later. But I don't know. I feel like it was a one and done for Netflix. That cool. You took a sci-fi novel that had an intriguing premise, or a sci-fi series that had an intriguing premise, gave a Netflix budget, got some actors, and did something with it. I guess it's cool.
A lot of the pieces just didn't fit. Like down at street level, it really scratched my itch for very sci-fi noir. You had people with Everyone had clear umbrellas. There were neon lights
Oh, the
everywhere.
looks great.
The rain is great, but then you get into places like the police station, and it looks like it could be
It just looks
a
like
future
Google Glass.
or a future version of Law and Order. It feels very just standard police procedural.
Yeah.
It loses all the dynamic stuff when you get away from those street shots, and even then, the street shots aren't doing anything new. They're just giving you more of, hey, I liked Blade Runner, so let's go for that feel beat for beat.
Yeah, you do get that. I mean, like, it was cool to see, like, the tenements basically being all the Golden Gate Bridge is basically tenement housing now. That was kind of cool. Like a lot. The visuals are great, top notch stuff like that, especially for a Netflix budget for a series that probably wasn't pushed that much.
I was actually wondering whether or not there was another, like somehow, or sometimes Netflix will team up with the BBC.
Oh, if it was a cross production,
right? But I haven't seen anything that indicates that.
Yeah,
this looks
I'm
like
not
it was just a Netflix original.
But no. I mean, back to plot. Yeah, within the first 2 episodes, you get this super rich meth who thaws this guy out, who was essentially an enemy of the current state. Granted, from back in the past, but like he's a branded terrorist forever because he was a rebel element, and he thaws this guy out to solve his own murder. Not the guy he thought out, but this meth was killed in his study with a gun that only him and his wife have access to with a biometric lock, and they seem to both have alibis. And he's like, well, who killed me if I didn't kill me? Because again, the MacGuffin here is that the way he needle casts or whatever. There's like a 2-hour buffer that's lost because of the weapon that was used. So it's like, I don't remember it, even if it was recorded.
Classic locked room mystery.
Yes.
Which you don't see enough of.
And you get enough of these, the meths in his family are the appropriate level of deranged for this kind of, like man in a room story. But then you just kind of focus more on B plots and his own back and the detective character's main backstory. That you lose the best part of the story, which is solving this amoral asshole's murder, and it falls to the wayside until like the 8th episode, and then they sloppily clean it up.
And it never really touches, well, at least not enough, on the fact that this whole revolution that this guy was fighting and almost died for was a revolution against the entire idea of being able to re-sleeve.
Yes.
They were trying to get rid of that technology because their leader predicted that it would lead to vast wealth inequality.
Yeah, to those in power being able to stay in power perpetually because of the gift of the stats.
Yeah, so he wakes up and now he's working for the people that he was fighting against. And I don't think that they really did enough to give depth on where his head was at with that.
Yeah, they never really have him question it. They just have him just be just the acerbic asshole.
Yeah, for the first,
just put me back under.
For the first probably half of the show, I assumed that he was maybe some sort of mercenary working for them, that he just didn't really have a dog in the fight. And you find out later on that he absolutely did. And I didn't figure that out until past the halfway point of the show.
Yeah. It's because they have a lot of meandering stuff because okay, we're clearly already talking about spoilers, but the sleeve he's in was actually the main female cop's partner, so it's kind of a double bind in that he brought back somebody who's an enemy of the state and put him in the last person she would want to see being used that way.
Also, a person who is assumed to be a corrupt cop.
Yes.
There's a whole bunch of
it's like they took too many plot threads and tried to weave them into an already complicated plot because of the nature of the status quo of this world. That's already alien enough. You could have just done a simple story using that in clever ways. Like, for example, one of the main ways they find out what the murder mystery is because the main meth, like, he has a penchant for choking prostitutes. Why would you do that in your own sleeve? Why would you not use just a cheap sleeve that you can get for a couple hours so that people won't know that it's you?
Why not?
And I guess you'd say the hubris of a meth being like, I'm untouchable anyways, so what does it matter? But not even that's touched upon. It's really just kind of people are gonna do dumb things because they think they're untouchable, and it's just like, yeah, but you have like a lot of ways to totally circumvent this illegally as well with the amount of wealth you're afforded.
Well, I was trying to figure out too whether or not a whole plot thread is snuff killings, like being able to
and I don't think it's horrible enough for what it could have been with how the implications of that world too.
Yeah,
they could have gotten a lot worse with that element. I mean, it was bad, but they could have gotten a lot worse with it. And the character involved in it has absolutely nothing that would make you think her capable of that. It's a huge logic leap. But then again, you've got this built-in 250 years of seething there.
Right, and you don't get a sense for it. So that's Altered Carbon. If you like,
it's one of those things. If you're into like neo noir, if you really like the Blade Runner look, and you
don't care about the plot,
well, there's enough plot there to keep you. If you just want to watch something sci-fi that's not going to tax you on time, you can watch it at your own pace because it is a Netflix series. It's worth a look, but don't expect it to be transcendent or anything that's got to be must see. It's just one of those like curiosities that if it itches, it should be enough that I watched it through, but it did become a slog near the end. But I mean, there's some good characters, there's some good acting at certain parts,
well,
and then
there's also some atrocious acting.
Oh yes,
his sister. I was hoping that maybe she would get re-sleeved as somebody else, and that the actress that they got.
Before we let you go, the best actor in the series is a big fat biker.
I forgot about him.
The best actor in the series is a big fat biker who, in one or is it 2 episodes? We'll say 1 episode to make this seem far more awesome than it is. He plays a big fat asshole biker, a kindly old
Mexican
grandmother,
yeah,
and then a Russian psychopath.
In over the course of an episode or maybe 2.
Because he's sleeved that that sleeve is used by that many people, and he's the only character, because this happens to a couple characters, he's the only character that flawlessly pulls off all 3 personalities and makes you think they're different people.
I'm sure this guy's got a name, but I've never seen him in anything else.
No, but he was fantastic. Yeah. I was like, this guy is amazing.
He should have his own spin-off.
Well, what really hurts it is when the Asian actor has to play the Russian guy later, and you just don't buy it for a second.
Oh yeah, It's amazing how much I'm blanking out.
And that like plot wise was supposed to be something relevant because he's using another character's sleeve basically, and it's just you can't pull off that accent or mannerisms like I feel like it's something that probably would have been really good if the plot were bad, if some of the character actors were really really good.
It could
be able to play different people.
But by the end, you had some gratuitous video game-esque. Let me back up. There are multiple clones of the same antagonist, just to show you some full frontal female nudity.
Pretty much
fighting with a katana blade.
Yeah, it's very
in a video game like scene where every time you kill one of the clones, another one at a time pops out, and
it's very Sixth Day.
Yeah. Oh God.
Yeah, it's very Sixth Day, and it's very Sixth Day and very Equilibrium. Like choreography wise, it's very Equilibrium like.
You just ruined Equilibrium for me. Not that it was a great movie to begin with.
I think we should talk about Equilibrium.
not today, but we'll get back to that at some point.
But no, it's one of those things. It's a curiosity. I mean, I can't recommend it. If we're gonna go binary on a recommend, don't recommend. I can't recommend it, but it's one of those things where if you have the time like us and just need to fill endless cycles of your life with something to do, it's worth a watch just to see some of the cool things that work. But
yeah,
like far less works than does, but what does work is cool enough to warrant a look once in a while.
The implications in it are there's a whole episode where they put the protagonist into VR torture. So they're torturing him until he's dead, and then just waking him back up with a refreshed body and torturing him again. And though there's some pretty terrifying implications behind what would happen in a world like this.
Yeah, when they delve into the world more, the world is more interesting than the plot. If I had to be a TLDR, a too long didn't read, the world is far more interesting than the story they have in it, which is unfortunate because it is a cool world.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, we'll talk about more crap sometime soon.
All right, bye.